Okay, so we are going to make a program called the Crack the Code program. And in this program, some of the key concepts that we are going to talk about and learn about are first, nested if statements, which we'll talk about in a second. We're also going to look again at relational and logical or Boolean operators. So logical operators can also be called Boolean operators. And then we're going to look at conditional statements. And this is basically using logic in our program. It's also how computers work. So it's checking to see if a statement is true or false, and then your program is going to do something according to that condition. And in order to make this program, there are 3 requirements that the program needs to run. And so the program requirements are this. So you are going to have to enter 3 different numbers or 3 different passwords in order to crack the code and be able to get into the program. So the first password requirement is that the number must equal 3. The second requirement is that the number can either be the number 1 or it can be between 33 and 100 inclusive. That means it includes 33 and it includes 100 and everything in between. And finally, the third number must be larger than 200 but not equal to 200. So let's get started. What we're going to do is go over to the events block, or actually before I do that, make sure to name your program. Otherwise, you're just going to end up with a bunch of untitled programs, and it's going to be very hard to tell which program is which. So I'm going to call this the Crack the Code program. And it's also a good idea to put your last name at the front of the program and then put a little underscore next to it. So if you're ever turning something in and you want to make sure that your instructor gets it, it's a good idea to have your last name there. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is go over to events and grab a when flag is clicked block. And then, so this allows me to run my program. So when I click the green flag, the program will start. The next thing I want to do is take an input from a user, and I do that by going to sensing and I grab an ask block. And actually, before I do that, I'll actually grab a say block. And I'm just going to say, welcome. Are you ready to crack the code? Question mark. And we'll say that for maybe 4 seconds. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, please enter the first password. Please enter the first password. Now, I'm going to go over to variables next on the left side, and I need to make 3 variables because I want to store the user input in a variable so that I'm able to use it later on and that I don't get it confused with one of these answer blocks. So if you remember, the ask block temporarily stores the input from the user in this little answer bubble. But if I'm using multiple answer bubbles, it gets very confusing as to what value is in each variable. So I'm going to go over to variables. And I click on variables, and what I want to do is make a variable real quick. And I'm just going to call this pass1 for password 1, pass2 for password 2, and pass3 for password 3. Again, if I'm going too fast in any of these videos, just be sure to pause the video in order to catch up, or just rewind the video back to where you need to be. Okay, so once I've asked the user to enter the first password, I want to grab a set variable block, and I'm going to set this first one to pass1, because that first input is going to get saved to password 1. Okay, once that's done, I want to go over to control and I want to grab an if-then-else block. I do not want to use an if-then block because for this program, if a condition, which is going to fit in this little diamond slot here, if this condition is false, the program needs to end, which is what is going to go in the else block. If I don't have an else block, then the program is not going to be able to say that it's ending or that you entered the wrong number. You would have to put another block down here. For example, if I did this, you'd have to put a say block down here, and this block will run regardless of if this statement is true or false. So this format will not work for us for this program. So I'm going to use an if then else block instead. And then what I'm going to do is I need to grab a relational operator, which is going to be my equals operator. And if you remember, relational operators are things like greater than, less than, or equal to. So I want to check to see if password 1, which is the first number the user enters, if that is equal to the number 1. Or sorry, not the number 1, the number 3. Because that's the first condition of our program. Now, if this is incorrect, so if the user types in the number 10, for example, the program should end. So I'm going to grab a say block, and I'm going to drop it in the else section. And I'm going to say, sorry, incorrect password. Please try again. Sorry, incorrect password. Please try again. Okay, now here's where it's a little tricky or a little confusing. So if this if statement is correct, I want to do the exact same thing I did right here. I want to do that again for the second number. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to two-finger tap on the ask block right here because I'm basically copying this entire block of code. So I'm going to say duplicate, and I'm just going to set it over here for a second. Now, here's where we come to nested if statements. And the way nested if statements work is that if one condition is true, I'm then going to check another condition inside of it, which means I'm going to take this chunk of code and I'm going to put it right here into the if section of this block of code. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to drop it in the if section. So if password number 1 equals 3, I'm going to say something like this. So I'm going to change this line of text here. I'm going to say, correct. Please enter the second password. Please enter the second password. And then I need to set the pass2 variable to that answer. Now my second condition says, or second requirement for the program says that this number can either be 1 or a number between 33 and 100 inclusive. So I'm going to keep this actually, well, I'll just get rid of that for a second. So I'm going to go over to operators, and I first need an or Boolean. So this is a logical operator or a Boolean operator, because the number can either be the number 1 or it can be 33 and 100. So I'm going to grab an equals block, and I'm going to say if pass2 is equal to the number 1, or, and I need to check a range of numbers. And so I'm going to use the AND block for this. So if you remember from class, AND Booleans are used if you're looking for a range, because a number can be both greater than or equal to 33, and it can be less than or equal to 100 at the same time. However, a number cannot be both 1 and the number 50, for example. So I have to use an OR Boolean for this part. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to check to see if the number is greater than, but including 33. So I'm going to grab a greater than block, and I'm going to grab password 2. Now, Scratch does not really make a distinction between integers and floats. So you can put either a whole number here or you can put a decimal. So in order to include the number 33, what I'm going to just do is say 32.9. As long as password is greater than 32, or password 2 is greater than 32.9, which would mean it includes 33, and it is less than 100.1, because that would include 100. If that's correct, I'm going to continue on with my program. But if it's not, notice how I already have an else block here, and it says, sorry, incorrect password, please try again. Also, just note, because these are else blocks, if I answer this, the second number or the second password incorrectly, it'll say, sorry, incorrect password. The program will end right here. It will not run this else section. It would only run this else section if the first if statement is false. So the nice thing about using nested if loops or nested if statements is that at any point in this program, if I answer one of these conditions incorrectly, it'll say sorry, incorrect password, and the program will end. All right, so let's do this one more time. So notice I'm just going to duplicate this second section, and I'm going to place this inside of the second if statement. So I'm just going to drop it right here. And again, I'll say correct. Please enter the final password. And I'm just going to throw this away so we can start fresh. And again, remember, if this final number is incorrect, it'll say, sorry, incorrect password, please try again. And don't forget, I do need to change this to password 3. So correct, please enter the final password. Now, the final condition says the third number must be larger than 200, but not equal to 200. So for this one, I'm going to grab a greater than block. And I'm also going to grab password 3. And I'm going to say if password 3 is greater than 200, because that does not include 200. If that input is true or correct, we'll say congratulations, you cracked the code. And of course, if I get this wrong, it'll say sorry, incorrect password. So notice the structure of this program. Each of the if then else statements is nested inside of each previous if statement. So let's give this a try and test it out and see if it works. So I'll just run it correctly first. So we'll say 3, 1, and 201. Congratulations, you cracked the code. That is good. Let's test that the first statement works, or the first conditional works, and that the program ends if I enter the wrong number. So I'll say 3, or actually I'll say 1. Sorry, incorrect password. Please try again. Program ends. You can also notice that the program is ended because the green flag is not highlighted. So let's test this again. I'll get the first one correct, but I'll get the second one wrong. I'll do something like 20. Sorry, incorrect password. Program ends. And I'll just test the final condition real quick. 3, 50, and let's try 100. Sorry, incorrect password. Please try again. All right, so you can see our program works. And just a reminder, we just reviewed nested if statements. We also looked at relational and logical operators, which are the ors and the ands that we used. The relational operators are the things like the equal sign and the less than or greater than. And just remember, these statements, whenever you're using logical or relational operators, are going to be either true or they're going to be false. They only have 2 possible outputs. And then we also looked at conditional statements. So those are these statements right here that will determine if the program continues on or if the program ends. All right, so be sure to click the share button at the top of the screen, and that will bring you to the project page. You come down to the bottom right and you click copy link, and you'll see the link to your program right here. Click copy link again, and then you're going to turn that link into Schoology in order to turn in the program. Otherwise, I will see you next time.